Okay, good morning, everyone. Our first year is going to be on Halachos tzitzis. Today's breakfast is sponsored by Rabbi Gordon Halevi Zisholtz, in honor of his grandfather's yahrzeit, Aryeh Leib ben Rav Pinchas, Shama Shab and Aliyah, Shiva Meltz Yosef for his whole family, for simchas, good health, happiness, parnasa, ad bi'as goyal tzadak. Amen. Okay, we're continuing in Halachos tzitzis. We're in Siman Tes Siv Katan Zayin. Okay, first halacha. What color should your strings be? Okay, we're not getting into Talis. We're talking about the other ones right now. Yesh lasos hatzitzis levanim. You should have white strings. Af bebegadim sfum. Even if your garment is colored, let's say you wear a blue garment, or a red garment, still the string should be white. However, it is ideal that the garment should be white also. Someone who is careful in performing mitzvahs should be careful to make 4 corners, a talis katan lavan, or a white talis katan, in order to fulfill those who hold that the tzitzis, the strings, should be the same color as the talis. There is an opinion that whatever color your garment is, the string should be that color. Therefore, since your strings are white, therefore you want to dafka have a white garment. V'gam mishum d'chsiv. Also, there's another consideration that the garment should be white. Like it says, ulevusheha kiteleg chivar. Your garment should be snow white. Okay? It's a davar yafa be'ita. It's snowing outside. Your garment of tzitzis should look like snow. So let's say the last time you got a new garment was when you were bar mitzvah, and your garment is not white anymore. It's brown, it's discolored, it's dirty. You're not fulfilling that consideration of having a white garment. Sometimes it's worthwhile, you get a shirt every so often. It's at least you should get a talis every so often. Sometimes, why are there black stripes on the tzitzit, on the talis? That which the edge of the garment is colored almost like tchelas. Most talisim are black. Ein kpeda. That's not a problem. That's not a violation because the basar ikar habeged azlinan. We go by the main garment. The main garment is white. Now this is very interesting. There's a tshuva from Rabbi Elyashiv about the new type of tchelas. What is his opinion about it? So Rabbi Elyashiv wrote, aside from the fact that he doesn't buy it. There have been many fake attempts of tchelas throughout the years, and each time they prove it to be untrue. So he says, who's to say this will also be proven untrue? But besides all of that, Rabbi Elyashiv said there's a halachic consideration, because some people say, well, if it's not tchelas, then what are you doing? You're not doing anything wrong. So Rabbi Elyashiv said, you are. Why? Because if it's not tchelas, the strings are supposed to be the same color of the garment. So if it's tchelas, of course that supersedes, that's more important. But if it's not tchelas, you're not fulfilling, the strings should be the same color of the garment. That was one of the arguments Rabbi Elyashiv used not to use the current tchelas.
But the strings are white. Like usually when people wear tchelas, it's only a few of them. So the chayr should be like the talis.
Yeah, the thing is though, by the talis, it's one entity. So therefore you go by the roiv. Here, each thing is independent. Rabbi Elyashiv said that if the tchelas is not legitimate tchelas, you're not fulfilling the inyan of the strings being the same color as the garment. Sivkatan ches. Yesh oimrim. Now, if you remember, last time we learned that there's a chumrah to have wool tzitzis. You don't have to. Sfardim need to. Ashkenazim, it's a legitimate chumrah. So you'll say, well, why do I need to how about I'll get linen tzitzis? The same way wool is chayv midaraisa according to all opinions. Likewise, linen is chayv midaraisa according to all opinions. So are you allowed to wear linen tzitzis? There is an opinion you're not allowed to wear linen tzitzis. Why? Gezeira shema yasa tzitzis michutei tcheles. Because you might make tzitzis from tcheles. Now tcheles is wool. So you say you're allowed to. V'havi klayim. So you say, but I'm allowed to put tcheles on a linen garment. Yeah, but not at night. So you might wear it at night. You might go to a minyan that they don't finish mincha by shkia. So not only is your mincha not l'chadchila, you're also wearing klayim on tzitzis. Yeah? V'havi klayim kishe yiskasa ba b'layla. It's shanis when you're covered at night. V'afal pi she'en halacha kain, even though that's not the halacha, meaning the halacha is we are not concerned, and you are allowed to have a garment of linen. Yirei Shemayim Yachmir, a Yarei Shemayim Shvi Machmir, not to have linen tzitzis. That's why I don't think you'll ever see anywhere linen tzitzis. Most people don't wear linen b'chlal. Maybe women. I don't think linen is a very common material today. Umiyu im iev sharag b'tal shel pishtan. If the only kind of towels you could use is linen, mutav shiatz tal shel pishtan. It's better to use a garment of linen v'tzitzis shel pishtan and linen strings v'yavarech alav and make a bracha mishayis batel mi mitzvah tzitzis than to be batel from the mitzvah tzitzis. Even though you're sort of taking a chance with linen tzitzis, you probably should bring it to the shatnez tester, because who knows what's going on. If you have one wool string in there that's on the edge sewing the hem, you're in big trouble. These halachos are obsolete. Really, who doesn't have a pair of tzitzis? I remember we mentioned that Tzaddik Ranana, he once wrote a letter to my grandfather. He doesn't have money even to buy a new pair of tzitzis. Nowadays, people have so much money, they could even buy eggs today. People even have money to buy eggs. Okay, umihu im yeshlei talis gadol. If you have a talis gadol shel tzemer, yivarich alav v'yichavdin lifter asel. This is very interesting. Let's say you have a talis gadol of tzemer and a talis katan of linen. Don't make the bracha on the linen. If that's your only choice, you can make the bracha. But if you have a wool talis gadol, better to make the bracha on the talis gadol and pater the talis katan that's linen. V'yesh amim sheyasabai kanfay shel ar. Some say if you have a linen garment, make leather corners. V'yato by tzitzis shel tzemer, and then put wool strings. But the achronim question whether you're allowed to do that, whether you're allowed to have a linen garment and leather corners and wool strings. Okay. Now, tzitzis shel tzemer rechelim, wool strings. Do we use wool strings? Yeah, we do. If you have a wool garment, you use wool strings. These strings right here, these are wool strings. If you have cotton garment, then you have cotton strings. Wool strings could pater any garment, even a cotton garment. Except for a linen garment. You can't use wool strings on a linen garment because it's klayim. You're allowed to have klayim. You can only have klayim if you have tcheles. If you don't have tcheles, then you can't have klayim. B'zman hazeh, wool paters all garments except for linen. Deleket ches mivnei shu klayim. Fine. Yud, tzitzis shel pishtan min ha'torah poiter b'chol habagadim chutz mi beged tzemer. Tzitzis of linen strings also pater any kind of garment. In other words, you could put linen strings on a cotton garment. Right? The wool and linen are wild cards. They work on anything. What kind of blood are they? What are they?
O.
They're O? What? Someone who's O could give to anybody?
That's a universal donor, right?
Universal donor? So wool and linen are universal donors. They're type O tzitzis. Okay? Linen won't work on wool. Some say don't use linen strings at all. Especially on silk. Again, sif katan, Ches was talking about not to use a linen garment. Nowadays, we don't use a linen garment because we're afraid you might make wool strings and use it at night. Now we're talking about using linen strings. There's a chumrah not to use linen strings at all. And b'shas hadchak, you can be samech on the lenient opinion, rather than being bato from the mitzvah of tzitzis altogether. The Gra was lenient about using linen strings. You could even make a bracha on it. Okay. Now what about other materials, like cotton? What other materials are there? Polyester, rayon, nylon. Let's not talk about synthetic. Let's talk about natural materials. Let's talk about, what is polyester made out of?
Natural? Plastic.
Is it? Polyester is plastic? Well, let's talk about silk or cotton. Now, are silk and cotton garments chayiv midoraisa and tzitzis? According to the Mechaber, no. According to the Rama, yes. So tzitzis shel sharminim, strings of other types, bein lahasoivrim shebigdei sharminim chayiv min haTorah. Whether you hold like the Rama, that other garments are chayiv midoraisa, ubein lahasam shechayiv midrabanan, or you hold like the Mechaber that they're only chayiv midrabanan, ein Patron ela b'minan. They'll only work on their species. So, for example, if you want to use silk strings, it will only work on a silk garment. You want to use cotton strings, it will only work on a cotton garment. Could go in meshi lebeged meshi, v'tzamer gefen, or cotton l'tzamer gefen. Uvilvad sheyu tavoy v'shazor l'shem tzitzis. As long as the string is twined and twisted l'shma kedin. Aval shaloi b'minan, but cotton on a silk garment, ein patron, does not work. Now, what if you have a layered garment? It's, so to speak, sometimes you have people, they have a leather jacket and they have a fur inside. Yeah, those guys? They have a leather jacket and they have fur inside. Or sometimes they have a fur coat and a leather inside. Not so many in this Makaim, but how do you define a garment? Do you go by the interior or the exterior? The exterior. Garments anyway are just for show. So it goes by what people see, not by what's keeping you warm. Talis shahatachtoin tafor b'tzemer. A garment that the bottom is sewn with wool, oy bepishtim, or linen, va'elyoin miminacher, and the top part is from a different species. As lina and basar elyoin, you go by the outside. Okay, now when a garment, let's finish the Siman here. When a garment is woven, you use a loom, right? The loom has two types of strings. You have the shasi and the arev, right? You have the warp and the weft. You have the horizontal strings and the vertical strings. So, talis shahashasi mishar minim v'ha'arev tzemer oila hepach. Let's say you have a talis that the warp was from, let's say, cotton, and the weft was wool, or the opposite. So now, what is it? Is it wool or is it cotton? Yatil by tzitzis shel tzemer. Put wool on it, because mimanav shach, if you use wool strings, the wool string is an old donor for tzitzis, right? It's the universal donor. Davka. Va'afilu rubai mishar minim. Even if the majority of it is from cotton. Kagon shechute ashasi avim yoser. Let's say the warp is very thick. Ayaruchim yoser, or long. So you have very little wool in the garment. Still, as long as one of the, whether it's the horizontal or the vertical, if it's wool, you have to be concerned that it's wool, and you cannot use cotton strings because cotton is not a universal donor. Only wool is a universal donor. Let's say the wool in the garment is not recognizable by itself. Let's say you mixed a little bit of wool in the shasi or the arev. So now you have one of the directions is completely cotton, and the other direction is a little bit wool. Still, we say, use wool. If there's any wool at all in the garment, you want to use wool, because in case we define it as a wool garment, the cotton strings are not going to work. The toiv sheyasa, the toiv yoser sheyasa tells kula shel tzemer. It's best to make the garment completely wool, beli taruvais klal, without any mix shel sharminim. But if you're going to use sharminim, let's say you have a cotton garment, it should be 100% cotton. Okay. Talis shu mu'urav b'tzemer gefen upishtim. A talis that's mixed cotton and linen. Oy sharminim upishtim. What kind of strings do you put on it? You can't put cotton strings, it might be a linen garment. You can't put linen strings, there's a chumrah not to use linen strings. Ein le talazu takana. This talis has no takana. There's no takana, nothing you could do with it. You take it and you put it where? Put in the garbage. Do tzitzis have kedusha? No. Tashmi shemitzvah. You do not have to put tzitzis in shemis. Halachically, you dispose of it in a respectful way. The minhag is you could double wrap it. But tzitzis, once you're done with it, do not have kedusha. Torah, tefillin, shemis do have kedusha. Okay, so this talis has no kedusha. Tezva, beged shel tzemer gefen v'kanfer shel meshi. Let's say you have a cotton garment with silk corners. Tzemer gefen is cotton. Why it's called the wool of the grape? Not sure, but it's cotton. Okay, and so you have a cotton garment and silk corners. Then use wool. Because you can't put cotton, it might be silk. Can't put silk, it might be cotton. So use wool. Likewise, if it's a cotton garment with leather corners. Tezayin. Oh, wow. Let's say you have a cotton garment, which many people today have. I think most people today they're wearing cotton garments. Are you allowed to put 2 cotton strings, because cotton patters cotton, and 2 wool strings, because wool is a universal donor? Are you allowed to mix and match? We know you're allowed to use all wool strings. We know you're allowed to use all cotton strings. Could you use half cotton and half wool? Yep, you could. You don't have to be consistent. Yud Zayin. V'im hitel b'tzitzi achas shalosh chutim yimina v'achas tzemer oy pishtim oy lahepach. Okay, so in the previous case, you did 2 strings of wool and 2 strings of cotton on a cotton garment. Could you do 3 strings of wool and 1 of cotton? Or 3 of cotton and 1 of wool? 2 and 2 you could do. You see, the lumdus of why 2 and 2 you could do is 2 cotton I could do on cotton. And I could do 2 wool, you know why? Because anyway, if in the time that I put tchelas on, the tchelas had to be wool. But am I allowed to do 3 wool and 1 cotton, or 3 cotton and 1 wool? So for example, v'im hitel b'tzitza achas shalosh chutim miminoi v'achas mitzemer, you want to put on a cotton garment 3 cotton strings and 1 of wool, or 1 of linen, I pished them, oy lehepach, or I want to do 3 wool and 1 cotton, oy sha'asa tzitza achas miminoi v'achas mitzemer upishtim, 1 from linen, and 1 I don't know what this case is. Oh, 1 corner you're going to do like this. Can I have on 1 corner cotton and 1 corner wool or linen? Yesh l'stapik by. That's a suffix. Okay, and the Reb Chaim brings the Ayin Mechazonish, Archaim Sim Gimel Sim Katan Chavav, Mashim Sabek, Ayin B'Shum Sadashna over Artis Achaim, the Mavur Gamza B'Chlal Svekei. Okay, that concludes Siman Tes in Shoneh Halachos. Next time we'll see whether we continue in Hilchos Tzitzis. We're approaching Shleshim Yom Koydem Purim. Okay, I'll tell you a few words on. You have a question?
Black stripes on the
The black stripes.
What did the Rav say?
No, the question is that because.
Yeah.
No, the question is that a problem? Because your strings are supposed to be the same color as the garment. So that's why the garment l'chachila should be white. Is it so? But it's not a problem to have a black stripe.
Well, why do we have a black stripe?
Why do we have? If I'm not mistaken, there's a Pri Megadim that says somehow it's a zeicher to tchelas.
So, okay, but why that? Okay, we need something.
Because really, it's supposed to be.
Blue.
It's supposed to be dark
That's
blue.
what the Sfardim have
No,
it. The
it's supposed
Sfardim
to be
have
dark-
it white also.
I know what happened.
It's white on white.
No, what happened was
It's supposed to be dark blue.
It became dark.